Good Tuesday morning, Roger Hill of Wuthering Heights, Philco Weather Hazards Forecaster. We're looking at the storm system, which is shot well out to sea. A lot of jet stream energy punched through, and this is our current surface low that's going to be curling, taking a track, and then curl up and through the Gulf of Maine, east of the New England coast, and then take a track and loop out. The heaviest snow is occurring right now in southern areas of Vermont, trying to make some inroads spreading further to the north, but not succeeding too much. Overall, we have generally wetter snows, generally in central Vermont, and especially in the southern areas. Of course, that's where the heaviest snow is falling. Looking at the latest conditions right now, what we can see where the temperatures are in that marginal scale here for wet snow loading, we're looking at a considerable amount of heavy snow working into the areas of southern Vermont with these bands. This is going to kind of remain in this particular area, the bulk of which will probably produce the heaviest snows in portions of Massachusetts, the southern Green Mountains, and some of that's extending north along the spine of the central Green Mountains as well. Northern areas are seeing much less, first of all, it's drier snowfall, and snowfall rates are much more not as problematic with the intense greater than 1.5 inches. We're going to look at the modeling here in a second. And once again, we're looking at this area of snow with the heaviest snowfalls in the range snow line, roughly a little bit interior sections of eastern Massachusetts. Same thing, this is the Canadian high resolution modeling. So let's run the model. So this is valid roughly at about 4 this morning. This would be 7 o'clock this morning. You can see these bands trying to make a run a little bit further to the north with a little bit of a lull starting to develop. A lot of that rotates to the west as the flow now is basically pretty much out of the east. Of course, northeast for surface, but we have this curling area of low pressure that tries to throw back a little bit more residual snowfall. Some moderate levels get into parts of eastern Vermont. This secondary system works in this evening. Roughly, it looks like the worst of it arriving in the northeast part of Vermont, somewhere around between 7 and 10 o'clock. And then as the area of low pressure begins to track south, it begins to lose a lot of definition here, much lighter intensities. And for practical purposes, by about 1 o'clock in the morning, I think the heaviest snowfall is pretty much going to be out of here. Notice it's looping around just a little bit. After that point, maybe another loop, and then shoots out at sea. Of course, the Canadian high resolution, very similar. A lot of the modeling is in pretty good agreement here. 1 hour total snowfalls at 10 to 1 snow to liquid ratios. Here's what we're looking at. This is our heavier snow bands, and of course this is greater than 1.5 inches, up around 2 inches snowfall rates per hour, generally in this particular area, mostly in Massachusetts, but also in southern parts of Vermont. This is the high resolution Canadian model, also showing the same. And what we can see here is that though this wants to head northbound, these are snowfall rates for each hour. So using Middlebury as an example, this is a little bit over a half an inch per hour, getting into sort of moderate rates, but generally the heavier snows remain to the south. So this is 10Z, 11Z. This would be finally 8 a.m. this morning. And note there's a bit of a dry slot that's going to try to make it in now. The HRRR model also indicating very similar conditions, and the European also tagging in on that, where we're going to see reduced rates. A little bit of an uptick through about 8 o'clock, but then we start to see that fall off just a little bit as we dry slot, especially notable here. Not sure if this is going to come completely to an end. The European thinks basically some fairly lighter snows, but note that the heavier snow banding remains basically in Bennington and Windham County, a little bit into extreme southern Rutland, as well as southern Windsor counties, with Springfield kind of right on the edge. And then once we get this looping business off the coast and it begins to loop south with the strongest coastal low at about 975 hectopascals, that's going to move and pull the whole system with much lighter snowfall as we head into the evening hours. Now, the Canadian model wraps that secondary band sort of westward, but it never really gets into Vermont, and for the most part, we're just seeing moderate rates of snowfall. But northern areas are kind of catching up into the act, but the damage will have been done across southern parts of Vermont. Strictly looking at the European, this is the 2 a.m. snow depth and changes. So what we can see here is the expansion of snowfall totals with a pretty good healthy dose of that snow with 1.5 or greater snowfall rates in these southern Bennington, Windham counties, extreme southern Rutland, and southern Windsor County. And you can see how this tries to expand with some secondary business coming in later this evening, adding a little bit snow totals to some of the higher elevations of the Green Mountains. But for the most part, it's really a southern half of Vermont, northern half of Vermont, and it looks like it's going to really stay that way. Roger Hill, Wuthering Heights, thanks for watching.